In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That is in the Bible in Genesis, essentially explaining how everything was created. And the topic of this video is that the matrix is constructed through words. So I just wanted to be touching on the topics of symbology, language, and labels. So essentially, this might be a shorter video. The reason why I spoke that verse in the beginning is because it's in a way indirectly communicating what I'm trying to communicate in this video. As I said already, that the matrix or reality is constructed through words. And that sounds strange, but what I'm essentially saying is that if there was no such thing as words or language or sound, then there would be no reality. Try to imagine a scenario where there's no language. Like if you speak English, there's no English, or there's no anything. There's no, and therefore, because there's no language, you can't think. So, try to imagine, or try to stop thinking right now, and see what reality is. And then you'll see that reality is constructed out of words. If there's no words, then there's no reality. What people think the world is what they think about the world. So in a sense, the world is like in a math formula, X, right? Like you're trying to solve X, and X is in a sense undetermined. So that's the world. The world is X, or reality, which is nothing, right? It's nothingness. And this touches into quantum mechanics to where when something is in a wave form, before it's collapsed into a particle, it's undetermined what it is. But once it's perceived by a subject, then it's collapsed and it's determined what it is, right? And this is essentially how we construct reality through symbols and labels. This is why everyone has a name. If you didn't have a name, you wouldn't exist. For example, the concept of water. If we didn't have a label for water and a name for it, then water wouldn't exist to us. It's only because we have a name and we created a conceptual category in the minds of man, and then we project that that's an external reality, that there actually is such a thing as water. And we act as if, yes, water is just a label that we created, but water is still water anyway. Like there really is water. But the only reality of what water is the concept of it. There's no actually such thing as water. There's no such thing as humans or humanity. The only reason why we think that there's humanity is because there's a label. And then, so you can create anything by creating a word. Like, I could say jumble buck. Then people be like, "What's Jumblebuck?" And I'll say, "Jumblebuck is when this and this and this happens." And they'll be like, "Rah, that's what Jumblebuck is." Like, think about how language changes, slang. Think about just the English language. That's just one language, yeah. Think about how much has changed. Like, go. Have you ever seen one of these videos where it shows how like English evolved, what it was sounding like hundreds and thousands of years ago? Like, it sounds like a different language. It's 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 there's no similarity at all because words are made up and we create reality through words, through labeling things and calling things something. The moment you give something a name, then it seems like that's what it is and it exists. But try to imagine a reality where you stop labeling everything and you can actively practice this in your life. Just look at something and don't label it. You're doing it so automatically, you've been programmed since young, from when you was in school, like 3 or 4 years old. They put you in nursery, put your reception year one, already started teaching you the alphabet, started teaching you words. Like that's like in the most core in your brain. Like it happens so automatically, you can't even look at something without your brain straight away saying that's a car, or that's a person, or that's a man, or that's a woman, or that's good, or that's bad. Straight away, that's what your mind's doing. So you have to, in a sense, untrain yourself to be able to look at reality without labeling it and without judging and trying to put it in a category. And then if you learn to do that, then slowly you'll see that this is actually just an empty vacuum and nothing's actually happening at all. Like there's nobody, like like nobody exists. Sorry, 1 second. Um, yeah, I even got the idea of making this video. What was the? Because I was watching a video myself. Then I think they were speaking about like MGTOW or something like that, and then the guy was saying something like, "Oh yeah, like it's just that like it's not really like it's just like people men reacting in a certain way or whatever." Like, but then it's the moment that there's a name created. Like this happens in a lot of like politics as well. They start creating names for like phenomenon, and then it's just like without names, nothing exists because names is distinguishing everything. See, reality can't exist without distinctions. And the moment you have labels and symbols, because look, realize that with language, you can't use the same word for every single, for like different objects. Every single different object has to have a unique word or a unique symbol assigned to it. And that's because you're distinguishing one thing from another. Like imagine if everyone had the same name. Or imagine if every single object in the universe had the same name. How would you even be able to communicate? It would be impossible. Because everything would just be like, it would be like this, and this. Like, there's not even a distinction. You can't even make any logic out of that because it's all just one thing. So there's not even contrast to create a meaning or anything or context. So language is used to distinguish reality. It's in a sense used to divide the universe into categories, and then you can start and then when you're analyzing how these different categories are interacting with each other, then that's what we kind of call science. But the problem with science is that they start taking these categories as like fundamental, as if they actually exist without us imagining that they do. Um, Even life is just a label. Saying someone's alive, that's just a label. What the fuck does it mean to be alive? Like everyone that's watching this video is supposedly alive, but then if you start just ask them point blank, what is life? They will struggle to tell you. They'll struggle to tell you what does it mean to be alive. It's just a word and a concept. Like for example, I've used this this example in some of my other videos. I think I use it for the absurdity of it. But Father Christmas, like what is Father Christmas made out of? People say, Father Christmas doesn't exist. Because they're saying he doesn't exist physically. But see, that would already assume that this is all a physical universe and you have to exist as atoms to be real. But that's wrong. Because what I'm communicating with you right now is just concepts. These concepts aren't made out of atoms. And it still exists. You're still understanding it. Logic is not made out of atoms. Emotions are not made out of atoms, but they're real. Consciousness is not made out of atoms, but it's real. So you can't use that as a ground that, he doesn't exist because of so on and so forth. Like Santa Claus does exist, but obviously just as an imagination, just as an idea. Okay, yeah, that's true. But then you might accept that, but then you might think that, yeah, Santa Claus exists as an idea, but time and space or life and death, these don't just exist as just an idea. Like, those are real things. But no, they exist. They're just as real as Santa Claus, and they exist as ideas. And we can only think about them because they have a label and a name. And try to think about what life is without even having the word life. Like without thinking the word life and thinking at all, without thinking what is life? See, because every single thought you have is just an interpretation about life. It's not life itself. Everything you tell me that life is just your hypothesis of what life is. It's not actually what life is. And see, because life isn't actually anything. It's just a word and a concept. And if you don't think about the term life, then there's no such thing as life. Life is a concept. Like, you're only alive when you're narrating to yourself, I am alive. You're constantly, on a subconscious level, reinforcing to yourself, I am alive, I am alive, I am alive. You don't even notice it. You're subconsciously saying, I exist, I exist, I exist. You're subconsciously saying, I am a human. I am a human. I am a human. You're subconsciously saying, I need to survive. I need to survive. So on and so forth. And it's like your mind is created through these repetitive sounds. Everyone says, oh, everything's a vibration, all of this stuff. Yeah, so what is vibration? Vibration is sound. What is a thought? A thought is sound. What is a word? A word is just sound in a particular like shape. This is even what mantras are all about. And now we have the technology to see how vibrations create these geometrical patterns, because like the universe is symmetrical. This is why there's all these sacred geometries, and if you look at the churches, they have all these like, and the mosques and everything, and the temples, they're all like created with these mad geometries, because it's all communicating that it came out of the 0 point, which is the 0 dimension, which is nothingness. Every single dimension, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it all came out of 0. And that's just the point. That's what symmetry is. It's all like look at all these sacred geometries, and what do they all have in common? They have a point in the middle. Even if you look at fractals, zoom in, it's always got a point in the middle that is zooming towards or away from. Your consciousness is that 0 point, which is a reference for everything around it that's happening to that point. You're not even moving through space. Space is moving around you like a treadmill, giving you the illusion of progression, like you're going somewhere, but you're in the same place that you've always been. And all these forms are just vibrations, like pulses out. That's the Big Bang, right? Like it's the Big Bang. Like an explosion comes from a point, and then the big crunch happens back into a point, the 0 point. And 0, in a sense, in a sine wave, represents the baseline, and then everything else is an oscillation above and below, and that's sound. That's the vibration that creates the word. The word in the beginning was the word, and the word was God. See, so essentially, like in stories, you have the narrator narrating things, telling the story. That's what the story is. The story is a person saying words, illustrating the story. If there's no narrator telling you the words, like if you're reading a book and there's not your like head, your brain thinking and saying the words in your head to yourself, and then you're hearing the words, that's the story, is the narration, the soundtrack of it telling you what's happening. Because what I might say might sound paradoxical, but even if there was something happening, if you didn't have the capability of labeling it and interpreting it, it would be the same as nothing happening. Because nothing actually is happening, but you're insisting that something's happening. Because the soundtrack, you keep on saying something is happening, what is happening? Because you think that something's happening, you're trying to figure out what is happening and why it's happening. But you'll never get those answers because nothing actually is happening. And of course there can be no reason because nothing's happening. So what are you talking about? The reason for what? It's an empty void, silence that never began or ended. What are you talking about? See, that's why every single thing, like sentence you say is just speaking about nothing. That's why every sentence has a full stop. That's the 0 point as well. Like, every sentence has to end. Why? Because like it began from nothing, and then that's like the sine wave as it arrives above the arc, and then it ends. The full stop, that's the end when it comes back to nothing. So I just want you to realize, like, just actually do a consciousness experiment with yourself where you try to look at the world without labeling. It's going to happen so automatically, but even just becoming aware of it, then you're going to realize, oh, like, your mind's constantly narrating and telling a story about what's happening. And if there was not that voice, that's saying what's happening, nothing would be happening. The reason why it feels like there's something happening, of course, even without the voice overlay, is that the nothingness is dynamic. So this is what people get misconfused, like what they get confused about is that they think that a void or nothing would be static. But actually the void, it's impossible for the void to be static. Because if it was static and it was like frozen in one particular way, then that's what it would be, which would be something in particular. So it wouldn't be nothing anymore. It would be something. So actually it can't stay still. It's extremely dynamic. So it's always moving, but still nothing is happening because everything is always equivalent to itself. I've used this analogy before. For example, like you could come up with infinite equations that equal to zero, and all the equations could be different. 5 times 0 is equal to 0. 2 minus 2 is equal to 0. 89 minus 89 is equal to 0. 50 times 0 is equal to 0. 1,270,621.8893 times 0 is equal to 0. See, and you could create infinite equations that are all equivalent to the same thing. See, so that's really what's happening, is that this is a void, a dynamic void that was never created and never will end because it's not actually creating anything substantial. It's never actually arose above 0. It's always at 0. But then you misconstrue and believe that reality is substantial and above 0, like as if something exists, because you mistake you think that if this really was nothing, it wouldn't be dynamic. You think this would be static, but that's a false assumption. And actually, the void can't be static. So, for example, this video, because I'm speaking and I'm using language and labels, it appears right now as if I'm speaking about something. But what I'm speaking about is nothing. I'm not actually speaking about anything. Can you realize that? That's the point of this video. I'm saying, look, these are sounds and I'm speaking about nothing. I'm basically speaking gibberish. And your brain is creating another soundtrack, interpreting and labeling what I'm labeling. And then you think that you're reacting to what I'm labeling, but you're actually reacting to your own labels that are being layered on top of what I'm labeling. So I'll be saying something, and then you're in your head, you're saying something about what I'm saying, and then you're hearing that. And I'm saying without that, there would be nothing. You would realize that I'm saying words, and the words don't mean anything. You'd realize that there's movement, but the movement isn't going anywhere. Like the energy or the substance that's moving isn't like going anywhere. It's not like going in a direction this way. Like we're not actually going this way, are we? Like we're just staying right here. It's moving, but like the moment it kind of moves right, something else is moving to the left. So that's why it's always balanced. That's why that's what creates all those sacred geometry patterns and all of this kind of stuff. Got my new chalk here. What do you think of this? Decent. Felt like my laptop camera isn't really the highest definition, but yeah, seeing the pearly gates. But yeah, that's the main thing I want to just iterate in this video is that it's the words, it's the soundtrack, and this is why a lot of teachers like to speak less. They like Ramana Maharshi and so on. They didn't say any like for. It's said, I don't know if it's true. It's said that he only really spoke and answered questions of the people that he knew were like very like very ignorant or essentially at beginner level, like completely ignorant of truth. But people who were a little bit more advanced and they were still asking him questions, like expecting an answer through words, he would just be silent. He just wouldn't say anything to them. He would just stare at them. Like the perception I'm trying to like communicate to you is a level of consciousness where you realize that me speaking is the same as me not speaking. There's no difference. It's just that you have your own personal soundtrack that's saying there's a difference between when he's speaking and when he's not speaking. You're saying there's a difference between when he says this word and when he says that word. There's a difference. And that's the voice, the soundtrack that's saying that. Thoughts, language. So that's what I'm saying, is that reality, it sounds so strange, but it's created out of words. And that's what they was even communicating, in my opinion, at the beginning of that Bible verse there. That in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. See, because God only exists when we speak about God. Like, what would God be if we didn't have a label for God? If the word God didn't exist, if the word Allah didn't exist, Shiva, whatever, Brahman, Jehovah, or fucking Jah, doesn't matter what the word is, right? Jesus, Muhammad, the Prophet, or whatever. It doesn't matter, like, but let's just take God, right? Like, if none of those words existed, if God didn't exist, and you didn't have the concept of what God is, what would God be? It would be nothing to you. So, I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I don't think so. Might leave that one there. Maybe I'll give it a rewatch, and if I miss something, then I'll add it in. But if not, if you enjoyed the video, I've actually none of my videos ever asked this, but I think maybe I should get in the habit of it. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, and if you're new as well and you enjoyed, subscribe please. And yeah, if you have any questions, put a comment below. I'll definitely reply. So nice one.